No way it actually worked. Do you see that? Do you see the kill feed? It actually worked. Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are going to be talking about the best attachments that you should be using on each weapon category. If you're making a new class, make sure you throw on these attachments first and then add whatever else you want, but make sure you have these attachments because these are the most valuable attachments that you should be throwing on your weapon. Anyways, let's get right into this. The first attachment you are going to want to be using on your ARs is the monolithic suppressor. This is a must-have attachment you should be using on all the ARs you use. And the reason I say the monolithic suppressor is a must-have is because, first of all, it's a suppressor in Warzone. It's really good to conceal yourself, make sure the enemies aren't knowing where you're shooting from or where you are on the minimap, because if you don't have a suppressor, you are going to show up on the minimap, so having that suppressor really conceals yourself. The next reason is because it gives you damage range. In Warzone, you are going to be picking shots off at medium and long range, and so this just makes it so it doesn't take as many bullets to knock or kill the enemy. And in previous CoDs, if you added a suppressor onto your gun, it would decrease the range, which doesn't really make sense IRL. So they kind of made it more realistic in this Call of Duty, and so they added the damage range, which helps a lot in Warzone. So when you have that sound suppression and that damage range, that just is a huge boost to your weapon. And the only cons to the monolithic suppressor is the aim down sight speed and aim walking steadiness, which doesn't really matter because you're going to be picking shots off at long range, and it doesn't really matter if it takes a long time to aim in. The next must-have attachment for the ARs is a Ranger foregrip. This Ranger foregrip, very underrated, but if you guys have been watching lots of streams lately of just pro players playing Warzone, you're going to notice that a lot of them use the Ranger foregrip on their ARs because it has a plus towards your recoil control, so that means you can knock players easier, you're going to land more shots. And landing more shots is just the key in Warzone. And it has a plus to the aiming stability. The aiming stability helps out with when you're shooting your gun, it kind of vibrates or just kind of shakes, and so when you have the aiming stability like increased, it will keep the gun more steady and like the sight won't bounce around as much. It kind of keeps it in one place, and so that just really helps you land more shots. The only downsides to this is aim walking movement speed doesn't really matter in Warzone, and aim down sight speed, which doesn't really matter in Warzone either. And the last must-have attachment for the ARs is a 60 round mag, or whatever the maximum capacity of mag that you can throw on your AR. Except for the GRA, I like to have the 50 round over the 60 round, just for different reasons I mentioned in my other videos, but for most of the guns I always throw on the biggest magazine I can. And the reason for that is when I down a player, I can then finish them in the same magazine, or I can pick 2 to 3 enemies off in the same magazine. If I only have the regular default one, I can't do that, and having the 60 round just really helps me be able to take out more players without having to reload, and it gives you a boost to your ammo, which is always nice to have. And the only downsides to this is having a decrease on your aim down sight speed doesn't really matter in Warzone, and your movement speed, that matters a little bit, but if you have a secondary that's like a pistol or MP7, you can just run around with those, so it doesn't really matter too much. On the SMGs, first must-have attachment that you're going to want to use on all the SMGs that you use is a monolithic suppressor, and it's just for the same reasons. It adds that damage range and that sound suppression, and having that extra damage range just really helps you pick off players at like medium range, since it's a little difficult with the SMG, so adding this monolithic suppressor onto your SMG just makes that a breeze. Second must-have attachment for the SMGs is a Merc foregrip. And the reason I say the Merc foregrip for the SMGs and not the Ranger foregrip or the Commando foregrip is because it helps you control your recoil and the hipfire accuracy. If you are not hipfiring in Warzone, you should probably start doing it. It helps you out so much. Like, hipfiring in this game is just amazing, and if you can get good at hipfiring, you can win so many more gunfights. It helps when you're drop shotting, you can just hipfire instead of having to aim in, and so trust me guys, the Merc foregrip is amazing for the SMGs. The only downsides is the aim walking movement speed and the aim down sight speed. The only one that I say is kind of crucial is the aim down sight speed, but you can just throw on other attachments onto the SMG just to bring that back up to regular. The third must-have attachment for your SMG is to have a increase of the mag size. If you can throw on a bigger mag onto your SMG, you should be doing that for the same reasons as the AR. It just makes it so you can pick off more enemies without having to reload. And for the shotguns, LMGs, and marksman rifles, you shouldn't really be using those in Warzone unless it's like plunder, or you're trying something out, or you're doing like a challenge. But if you're really trying and sweating, you shouldn't be using shotguns, LMGs, or marksman rifles, just because all the other weapon classes are so much more viable than those ones. And so because of that, I'm not going to go over them, but I will go over the sniper rifles because that is a key element in Warzone. And so for the snipers, I recommend, again, monolithic suppressor. Pretty much if you can throw on the monolithic suppressor, you are going to want to be doing that just because of how OP it is. The second must-have attachment is the extended barrel. If you can throw on a bigger barrel onto your weapon, like for the HDR for example, 26.9-inch HDR Pro, just to give yourself more range and more velocity. Maxing out the bullet velocity and the damage range is a key aspect to being successful with your sniper, because having the increased bullet velocity, you don't really have to lead your shots as much. And then for the damage range, if you hit them in the head, it's going to be a one shot, but in the body, you want to take at least possible shots to knock them. If you can knock them in like 1 to 2 shots, that would be amazing. And the third must-have thing on a sniper, I don't really use this just because it looks kind of scummy and doesn't look as good in gameplays. But if you're trying to be more successful and dominate lobbies, you are going to want to throw on the thermal sniper scope. Having the thermal sniper scope just makes it so you can pinpoint your enemies across the map way easier. You can do thermal scouting, which is where you just kind of look over an area with the thermal and see if there's any figures. And that's just a really good way to kind of pinpoint where your enemies are or kind of spot for enemies. Just having the thermal just makes the game way easier. But like I said, it's kind of scummy to use, so I try not to use it. But if you're trying to dominate, use the thermal. And for the secondaries, I'm not going to go over the pistols because nobody really uses pistols in Warzone. If you are not running overkill, your secondary should probably be a launcher. And I recommend having the Pila, Joker, or RPG. And that is going to wrap it up for all the best attachments that you should be using on your weapons. If you guys did enjoy the video, let me know by leaving a like. If you leave a comment, I will reply to you. Hit that subscribe button, turn on those post notifications, and I will see you guys in the next video.
Well, this mad world made me crazy. Might just turn around.